Is Keir Starmer the most hated man in Britain? To help me answer this question, I'm joined by Khaled, the London organiser for the RCP. But before we welcome him, I want to welcome you back to Communist Radio. We were away for a couple of months, but now we are back to address and discuss everything that's happening in Britain, which is a lot. So, Cal, welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Fiona.
It's good to be here.
It's good to be here for sure.
So, is Keir Starmer the most hated man in Britain?
He's on his way to becoming the most hated man in Britain.
Yes.
And possibly the most despised prime minister we've had for decades.
Yeah.
I think that this is becoming clearer. No matter where you stand on the political spectrum, Keir Starmer is hated, despised, loathed. This is the mood we're finding on the streets whenever we talk to a big cross-section of society.
Yeah.
And it's quite remarkable because if you think back a year ago, this was the man that promised nothing.
Yes.
That was his entire election pitch.
Yeah.
Was it's better to make no promises than break promises. But actually, that's a little bit unfair to him. There was one thing that he said he was going to do well, and that was economic growth. Mm-hmm. That was the mantra of the Labour government. It was in the manifesto. We're going to grow the economy and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
But actually, they've really, really struggled to make Britain competitive, i.e. profitable for the bosses. I was looking before this podcast started, and I think in July, there was no GDP growth whatsoever.
Yeah.
The economy is stagnant. People feel like the country is going backwards. And I think this is why he's drawing the ire of more and more people by the passing day.
Yeah. It's so interesting with Keir Starmer because you think, how can a man who is so grey, so nothing, become so passionately hated? And I think it's actually partly because he's such this type of like robotic politician.
Oh, yeah.
He's just a bit of a shell. Therefore, people can channel all of their anger that we would argue is essentially at the capitalist system and what capitalism is doing to people's lives. Yeah. But people can channel all of their anger at him because he doesn't stand for anything other than the fact that he is a representative of everyone's lives getting worse.
Yes.
And, you know, Labour have been in power for a year now. They won last year. And in that election, there wasn't, as you say, he wasn't promising much. So there wasn't huge enthusiasm for him. And yet people did still think, well, you know, it'd be good to get rid of the Tories, 15 years of austerity, maybe things will be slightly better. Because there wasn't an ideology attached to the Tories, that they were for the rich, you know, the private school, Bullingdon, you know, all of that stuff. Yeah. Boris Johnson, the parties. There was a real seething hatred towards them, especially over the COVID pandemic. And so there was this kind of last gasp in the election of Starmer. And the fact that not only have things not changed, but actually people's lives are getting worse, that has created, a deep anger. And anger is very different from just a kind of passivity that can exist. There is real anger towards Starmer. And as you say, ultimately it's because there has been no growth in the economy.
Yeah. People's lives are definitely getting worse. I mean, the cost of living crisis never went away for millions and millions of families. And I mean, after the election, I think there was a certain relief to see the backs of the Tories.
Yeah.
We said this at the time, and I remember the press were talking about this landslide victory, right?
Yes.
They were comparing it to Blair's first election in 1997. Where what was the anthem? Things can only get better. Well, it feels like the anthem of this Labour government has been things can only get worse with us at the helm. And he finds himself in a very tricky situation on all fronts. And I think this is probably where we should begin with our answer of, is Starmer destined to become the most hated man in Britain? Because economically speaking, there is very, very little he can do. He cannot turn the fortunes of British capitalism. And it reminds me of something that Rob Sewell, our political secretary, often says, which is in the 1950s, no matter who was in government, the government could do no wrong. You had a situation where the economy was booming, growth was the order of the day, and so tomorrow would always feel better than today, and the day after even better. That is not the economic prospects for Britain as things appear. And it really ties into something we've analysed for many, many years now, which is the British economy never recovered from the 2008 crash. And so austerity has become this perma-crisis that affects all layers in society. Of course, the poorest, the hardest. But it means that everything that they try to do to make Britain more competitive or to try basically get more in the state's coffers, you have two options in front of you. You either attack the working class, which, of course, Keir Starmer is more than happy to do. Of course, this is going to bring a serious backlash, and that's already beginning. That's already brewed in his first year in government. Or you attack the rich. And actually, the rich have all the cards in this particular equation. And I think this is a really important point. I mean, something we've been speaking about in the organisation recently is just how greatly indebted the British government are.
Yes.
They owe more in debt than they produce in a year.
Yeah.
And actually, when you look at how much they have to service the debt that they've incurred over the last 15 years in particular, it comes out as something like £110 billion. That is absolutely huge. And then you look at, for instance, the budget for the NHS, for the healthcare. It's only about 200 billion. So they are basically held ransom by billionaires, by private speculators. And so this is a terrible situation to be in for any government trying to manage the fortunes of British capitalism.
Yeah.
And it's fueling this backlash.
Yeah.
I mean, there was an article that I wanted to read from. It's in The Economist. You know, what did Lenin call The Economist? The paper of the rich.
Oh yeah.
But this
It's
I
good
think,
analysis, isn't it?
it can be good, and I just want to read what it has to say about the state of being a finance minister, not just in Britain, but anywhere in Western Europe now. So you are a finance minister after a decade of meager economic growth, shocks from a financial crisis, a pandemic, and sky-high energy prices. Public debt is worth more than your country's gross domestic product. Interest rates are at their highest rate in years. Your fellow ministers, meanwhile, fret for their careers. Populist parties are on the rampage. The economic context calls for fiscal consolidation. The political one warns against austerity. What do you do? So what does this article actually say? It says you do nothing. You go to bed thinking or consoling yourself that the next government, which will be a right populist one, will face all the same problems.
Yes.
That's all they have to say.
Yeah. I think it's funny as well that you started with this comparison with Tony Blair, because as you say, like Tony Blair, I would say morally speaking is the same as Keir Starmer, right? Both evil, war criminals, or odious, monstrous people. And yet Tony Blair, at least when he was in government, when he was Prime Minister, didn't have the same level of hatred thrust towards him. Of course, there was a lot of anger over Iraq and so on and so forth. But in terms of the deep-seated anger that exists towards Starmer today, it wasn't the same.
Yes.
But why? It's because the economy was in a different position. And that's even later than the 50s, right?
Yeah.
But at that point, before pre-2008, there was still a bit of room in the economy for certain reforms to be granted, which keeps, to a certain degree, a sense of peace or class peace can exist. But today, none of that room exists. And as you've just described, there's this huge stranglehold of debt that weighs on the government, that weighs on British capitalism, essentially. And Starmer came into government as the sensible man who was going to try and make the correct, tough, aka austerity choices for the economy. But actually, he's failed to even do that.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, we're not saying that no austerity exists. Austerity does exist, but they have tried to implement more cuts and actually, due to pressure, had to U-turn on that politically. We saw that a couple of months ago.
Yeah, no, that was a significant moment. I think at that stage, it was the biggest rebellion Starmer had seen from his government, from Labour MPs, when they tried to enact $5 billion worth of cuts to welfare.
Yeah,
I think they think that they were being clever about it. They thought, let's go after the some of the poorest and most downtrodden layers, the disabled.
So cynical.
And in fact, it massively, massively backfired.
Yeah.
And when that bill was passed in Parliament, it was basically contentless. It was formless. There was nothing left of what they needed to do. And this is a really big or a bad omen, let's say, for the Starmer government going forward. They have actually pushed back when the next budget will come. I think the fateful day will be November 26th.
Yes.
And everyone's saying, why so late? Why so late? Well, the answer is there. It's staring you in the face. It's because they are going to have to try cut social spending by between 20 and 50 billion. So what they tried earlier, I think in the spring or in the summer, will look like a picnic in comparison to what's coming and what's on the cards.
Exactly. And all of this means that Starmer is desperate to find any other way to appear as a strong man, right? As you say, the economy is in crisis. So no matter what Starmer does, it won't work, and it's wrong, and it's angering people. What he has tried to do is present himself as this tough figure by focusing on foreign affairs.
Oh, yeah.
Basically trying to use militarism and war as a distraction.
Yes.
As a distraction from the fact that his government is in complete crisis. And he started off very, dramatically, especially in regards to the war in Ukraine.
Yes.
Continuing completely from Boris Johnson and all of that kind of fist pumping, the British will stand with Ukraine forevermore and give you as much money as you need, £3 billion a year. Yeah. And but this isn't working.
Yeah. Someone actually told me, I'm not sure if this is true, I haven't verified it, but the only place where Keir Starmer's popularity has risen is in Ukraine. It's not in Britain. It's not anywhere else. It's not in France. It's not in the US.
Says a lot.
But it's absolutely right. I remember reading all of these fawning articles a little bit earlier in the year where The Economist, the Financial Times, they're asking the question, has Keir Starmer found his calling? And they were basically really buttering him up in the press about the staunch stance he was taking on the war in Ukraine. And I think rather than this coming as a show of strength, it shows extreme weakness on the part of British imperialism. Because the backdrop of this crisis is, of course, the United States reprioritizing its war with China over basically continuing and prolonging a war that has already been lost in Ukraine. Trump has been very clear on this particular point, and it leaves the Europeans in the lurch. But I think it affects Britain even more gravely because all of a sudden you've got one foot in the American camp because of the role that Britain has played for the Americans for decades and decades, so-called special relationship, and another foot in the camp of Europe as well. And it's this awful seed of acrobatics Starmer is trying to do of pleasing the master in Washington and at the same time warming up to the Europeans at a time where Trump has made it very clear this is not a priority anymore. We want to negotiate with Putin. And so it's just humiliating for the British imperialists to be in this particular spot. But yeah, he has used the opportunity to wrap himself up in the flag and pose as the strongman, as you were saying. But to what avail? I mean, the Europeans cannot stand on their own 2 feet, not least Britain. That's not the role that Britain has played for 70 years now, having any independent foreign policy. And so all of this talk about coalition of the willing, very ill-named coalition, given that's what they called the one in Iraq. But now they're talking about reassurance force, about sending troops, but them being towards the back and it only being 5,000. It's a complete and utter joke. And it reminds me of something. When the war in Ukraine began, the government at the time was beset by crisis. It was when the Partygate stuff was going on, right?
Yes, yeah.
All of the excessive boozing in Number 10. And what did Boris Johnson use the war in Ukraine to do? As a political distraction for the crisis at home. Starmer has clearly tried to play that card too, but rather than increase militarism, greater pledges for NATO, actually buoying his support, we are seeing the opposite. I think there is such a strong hatred that there is billions for war and not billions for the NHS, for housing, for education in this country. And this is really fueling the anger that I think so many people feel towards him.
Absolutely. It's just, you have to think in the midst of a cost of living crisis, inflation, conditions worsening, how Starmer or anyone in the ruling class could think it would be politically useful to try and justify billions for Ukraine, and also just billions on the military in general, whilst at the same time people are going through these conditions worsening, and it's not having the impact they want it to have. In the past, it's easier to promote the idea of spending a lot of money on the military to promote in general nationalism, to whip up fears of war or anything like this. But it isn't cutting through in the same way, because it's partly to do with this thing of people's conditions getting worse. But I would say it's also more broadly because people don't trust politicians. They don't trust Starmer. They don't believe him. It's not, most ordinary people, we can say, are not following the ins and outs of the war in Ukraine, right? They're not following everything that's happening there, or what potential, because that's not how ordinary working class people live their lives, right? So if a politician comes on screen and says, we have to spend all of this money, because they just think, who are you? I don't trust you. You're a part of this whole rotten lot. And I think that is what is costing Starmer the most.
Yes.
It's linked to what we said at the start. He's hated, he's not trusted. And it's not just him. Obviously, he is just a symbol of the rest of the ruling class. And so people aren't buying it.
There's so much scandal and sleaze. I think people thought that would end with the Johnson government.
Absolutely.
But not quite.
Not at all. And actually, from day one of Starmer being in power, we had all of the scandal about the freebies, the tickets, the football matches, the concerts, the amount of money that's being spent on like clothes. It was mind-boggling. And that has just continued. And in the last couple of weeks, I mean, it feels like every day there was another just damning headline about a minister, of course, first with Angela Rayner and the tax dodging scandal, not paying this tax duty on a second, third house. I can't even.
Third house in Hove.
In Hove. Lovely place.
That costs, I think, just shy of £1 million.
I mean, I think the audacity.
I think this is important though, because what role did Angela Rayner play for Starmer? She was kind of the working class cover of his government, right? Yep. She is
a northern working class
woman that never went to university, and I remember seeing some people compared her to like the John Prescott of the Blair years, right?
Yeah.
Being able to connect with working class people in a way someone as robotic and dull and boring as Keir Starmer could never.
Going to do it.
And yet the deputy
Although
prime
he is
minister,
the son of a tool maker.
Oh yeah, sorry, I forget about those promotional videos.
Know how you forgot that.
But
yeah, she was that.
That role that she played was a significant one, and now there is no cover even on that front anymore.
Exactly.
And so enter onto the scene Peter Mandelson.
Yes.
The Prince of Darkness.
Could help this situation. I mean, this Peter Mandelson thing, it's extraordinary because from the very beginning of his appointment, everyone was pointing out his connections with Epstein.
Yes. Like
immediately. And Starmer just ignored what's remarkable about this Labour government, and Starmer in particular, is the arrogance or the contempt and the self-belief that they can get away with it.
Yeah.
And as you say, people associate that with the Tories as though it's just a unique personality trait.
Yeah.
But what this has proven is that it's not a unique question of your personality. It's a confidence that comes from being backed by the ruling class, actually. When you are backed by the ruling class, when you're backed by the establishment, you can get away with anything until you're no longer useful to them.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. At that point, they will throw all of the mud at you to get rid of you, to try and find someone they think will be better. And that is sort of what is happening with Starmer and his government. This stuff that is now being exposed about Mandelson, his gross fawning emails or letters to Epstein, it's really bizarre. Again, it's just, and there's no way that Starmer didn't know any of this. He was a useful ally to him, and he didn't care. He does not care about any of it.
And I'd just say it, even if he didn't know, it doesn't matter.
Yes.
Because of the point you just made about the lack of trust, the lack of credibility that this
Same with
government
Angela
has.
Rayner. Even if it was somehow an honest mistake,
yeah.
it doesn't matter.
Yeah. because it's how you're perceived by the public.
Yes.
And that general image of the Labour Party is one of, they are the establishment, they do not stand for working people. And in fact, this government is spiraling out of crisis as a result. There is a total crisis in legitimacy.
Yeah.
And it's impacting, it's seriously impacting the political landscape in this country. We can come on to that in a little bit of time, but we've hammered now Starmer on the economic front, the military front, the diplomatic front, the social, the political front. So to come back to your question about why he's so hated by this big cross-section of society, let's talk about Palestine. Let's talk about the Defend Our Juries protests that had 1,500 people participate in it. And we were both down there at Parliament Square.
Yes. Yeah. Starmer's hated across the political spectrum, from the right to the left. And we saw that at Defend Our Juries. We went down there because we knew this was going to be the second protest that Defend Our Juries organised to oppose the proscription of Palestine Action as a terrorist organisation. Palestine Action obviously did take direct action against the Israeli war machine, against the weapons or parts or planes that are complicit in the genocide in Gaza. A peaceful action, actually. Non-violent. And the Labour government, Yvette Cooper, prescribed them as a terrorist organisation, as an attempt to clamp down on the Palestine movement as a whole, and actually potentially as a bit of a favour to Donald Trump. There's a lot of reports about that. But this was one step too far, and I think they really overplayed their hand. And what has happened is these Defend Our Juries and the people taking these actions are successfully, we would argue, beginning to make that law unworkable.
Yes.
Because what happens at these protests is the police are in a position where they are forced to attempt to arrest, well, initially hundreds of people, but in this case, over 1,000 people. And actually, we've got a good video clip of that, which I think we should show or share with the podcast now. I mean, the fact that so many people are willing to be arrested, they're willing to see their rights put on the line in this way, it is the defining issue for a whole generation of people. Yeah, so when we were there, I think we both said we were struck by how emotional the day felt and quite dystopian to be stood amongst so many people, watching them be arrested, just dragged away. Old people, young people, a whole range of people from different backgrounds, right? It was really quite a unique... I've not been to many things like that.
No, me neither.
And it was palpable because of the police presence. Yes. But it wasn't, I would say, purely negative, the feeling, because there was a strong police presence. There was a strong feeling of emotion. But I think that what people really felt was like, well, actually, the police are struggling. Because the police ultimately could not arrest everyone.
Yes.
So the law to make supporting Palestine Action illegal was actually proven to be slightly unworkable.
Yes.
Which is the purpose of this mass action that Defend Our Juries have organised. But at first I felt a bit weird, a bit dystopian. But by the end of the day, I thought, Starmer, Yvette Cooper, they've really messed up.
Yeah. To put it politely.
Yes. Yeah.
It was a historic day of defiance. I think that's what it's been hailed as. When you think about almost 1,000 people being arrested for an act of civil disobedience, being tarred with the same brush as ISIS cutthroats and supporters of Al-Qaeda.
Yeah.
But something I wanted to say is in the run-up to the protest, the police, the counter-terrorism units, the politicians, the press, they did all they could to make sure people wouldn't turn out. Mm-hmm. And yet, they weren't successful. In fact, it was bigger than the time before. There were so many people, thousands of people that went there to witness like we did.
Yes.
Many, many different journalists, people from different backgrounds, people we knew from the Palestine movement as well. Yeah. And one thing that I thought was significant is the police afterwards, in order to kind of cover their own asses, spoke about how they had to put up with exceptional levels of abuse.
Oh my God.
Yeah. before the police started to kind of come in and pick off people and carry them away, it was entirely peaceful.
Exactly.
It was quiet on Parliament Square.
Exactly.
I remember when we were walking around actually the square, we were seeing old people playing games of chess in their camping chairs.
Yeah.
Quakers were singing
the
their
Quakers
hymns.
were singing.
And what a terrible look for this government, for there to be arresting, predominantly older people, vicars, priests, doctors,
Veterans.
RAF
Yes.
veterans that had come with their children.
Yes.
The survivors of the descendants of survivors from the Holocaust.
Yes.
Right? What an awful look for this government to be doing this. And they talked about levels of abuse. Actually, what we saw in the day was extreme levels of violence and aggression on the part of the Met Police.
Exactly.
It lasted 11 hours,
Yeah.
this protest. And in fact, they waited for most people to leave in order to really go in and start using force.
As soon as it got dark.
Yes.
Yes, they wanted to tire people out and then sweep it all away. And as you say, the police were violent, thuggish, as they always are, especially the Met Police, we should say. But even with that, they weren't able to arrest everyone.
Yeah.
There were still hundreds of people left in Parliament Square. And so there's also another protest, by the way, planned for next month. And I wouldn't be surprised if that one is even bigger than the one we've just seen. And similar scenes are replicated.
Yes. There was one thing that actually a young lad that we interviewed said, which I thought was really, really interesting on this point. When we asked him, why did you come out? He was explaining that he hadn't been involved so actively in the Palestine movement. Actually, a young mother had never even been to a protest that we interviewed. We posted that online. But for this young lad, he said, this is the thin end of the wedge. The government thinks it can get away with this, and what's next? And he referenced Palestine Solidarity Campaign. Of course, people like Suella Braverman tried to actually bring that campaign down, right? They're all Hamas terrorists, that's what you're saying. And actually, she was brought down by the movement.
Yeah.
And he said, well, what's next? Is it going to be PSC? What's after that? And I think a lot of people realize with the state using these repressive measures, it will be trying to break strikes tomorrow, right?
Exactly.
People can see that an injury to one is an injury to all.
Exactly.
And they want to stand up against it. And the person that looked most weak from all of this was Starmer. I mean, we wrote in the article, is this going to be his Suella moment?
Yeah. It very well could be. And what is necessary is for the rest of, also we should say the Palestine movement, the PSC, to come out much more strongly in support of Defend Our Juries and these mass arrests. I mean, I know there was a kind of delegation that came from PSC at the end of the protest, which is good, which is fine. But there was hundreds of thousands of people on a national demonstration for Palestine at the same day, at the same time. Many of whom would have been supporting Defend Our Juries. And really, I think PSC leadership should be doing more to direct the movement towards these sorts of campaigns.
For sure.
But yeah, regardless, as you say, it's another example of Starmer overstretching, whether it's on any measure, whether it's an economic front, a military front, or this political front, in regards now to Palestine, which is contributing to the hatred towards him, which exists all across British society, in the midst of this kind of social malaise. And that is causing quite significant events to take place, which I would say also partially explains what we saw at the weekend, right?
Yes.
There is this huge anger, this social malaise. We should say there is no one on the left actually tapping into that in a broad enough way, in a big enough way right now.
Yes.
Obviously, Jeremy and Zara have announced their party, but it's not happened yet.
Where is
it? So what is happening? Other people are tapping into that anger and that malaise and directing it into a reactionary place.
Yes.
Enter Tommy Robinson.
Yeah, enter Tommy Robinson. Enter the biggest mobilization of the far right we've seen in decades.
Yes.
Over 100,000 people on the streets of London.
He says 3 million.
Yeah. That's a joke.
It's definitely not 3
But
million.
it was an unprecedented show of strength on the part of Tommy Robinson and his gang. And I think what a lot of people will be thinking, reflecting on the events of the weekend, is what on earth is the left doing?
Yeah.
Because there is this serious social malaise in society. There are deep-seated insecurities in working class communities. And of course, demagogues like Tommy Robinson, like Nigel Farage, are actually gaining from Starmer's failure.
Yes.
Why is that? It's primarily because the left isn't putting forward a militant working class program that's calling for class war. And so people are getting swept up into this culture war nonsense. They're being taken in by reactionary ideas. But these people know what they're doing. They're playing on real insecurities that people face. And the counter-protest was massively, massively outnumbered. Yes. And I think this is something we're going to release an article on very soon, our analysis of this. But where were the trade unions? Where was Jeremy Corbyn? If he would have sent one email to the 700,000, 800,000 people that have signed up for your party to come out onto the streets as a show of strength, to show that there is no place for people to be intimidated, to be harassed, we could have seen what the real balance of forces in society is, that people that support Tommy Robinson are not the majority. But there was not very, very little of that. Instead, what we find is this kind of moralistic virtue signaling on the left, actually playing into this culture war rhetoric. And that's not going to be enough to actually cut the ground from beneath figures like Tommy Robinson and all of the reaction that they spew.
Yes. I think that, as you say, lots of people will be looking at the images of the demonstration and the videos and thinking, what is going on? How has this happened? And for some people, it's very scary, and like understandably so, because a consequence of this demonstration is that I think there is a hardcore layer in society who are a minority, but a hardcore, violent, kind of fascist layer, racist layer, who will be emboldened off the back of the fact that a huge demonstration has taken place on the grounds of British values and in this kind of sensationalist culture war, demagogic way, which has drawn in huge layers, right? I think it is important for us to say that, yeah, there was 100,000 people out on the streets, 150,000 maybe. I don't think they were 100,000 fascists on the streets of London. There is a hardcore thuggish layer that you can see them, right? That you cannot deny that. It'd be ridiculous to deny. And they're attacking people, and they attacked people at the weekend. However, there were also a whole sort of other people that were there. People who have been swept up into this, families and who, as you say, have insecurities in their lives and have been, you know, taken in, at least on that day. We should also remember that nothing is fixed or permanent or static. And it doesn't mean that all of those people are hardened to whatever Tommy or Nigel Farage or Elon Musk wants to say in the future. But yeah, there is this broader layer out there who've been taken in by it. And yeah, this is really because of the failures of the left for the last couple of years.
Yes.
And I think that it's important for us to understand, given everything we've just said in the podcast, given everything that's happened since the pandemic, to be honest, that is what has produced this.
Yes.
And so, because once you understand why something is happening, you can feel a bit more calm and agency in what are we going to do about it.
Yes.
And as you say, our solution is that we need to build a militant working class socialist left-wing leadership, basically, that answers politically what is going on and doesn't just say, in response to a right-wing culture war, effectively a left-wing culture war, which is just to say, well, refugees are welcome here and you're a racist for denying that. That is not enough, right? And actually, unless you're able to answer the problems that are being posed by capitalism, why will anyone listen to us? Why will anyone listen to you? That's why when we went and I was at the demonstration for the first bit, we had placards exposing the fact that it's bankers and landlords who are responsible for the housing crisis, that have destroyed or are privatizing the NHS. And we were using chants like, sink the system, not the boats, right? We were saying that it isn't just that there's this awful, horrific, racist ideology that has gripped the minds of hundreds of thousands of people overnight, but that this this economic crisis, this social malaise means that people are looking for answers, being drawn into different things. Some of them are lost, right? And we're not talking to them at all. But the reason that a lot of them are still going in that direction, is because they don't feel an alternative. But it was a reactionary demonstration. And it will have reactionary consequences, because now these people are laughing.
Yes.
They're like, the counter demonstration, there was about 5,000 to 10,000 people on it.
Yes.
Yeah.
When how many workers are organised in this country?
Yeah.
Must be close to 6-7 million.
Yeah.
And I could understand why someone would feel very panicked off the back of the weekend's events. I think it will leave a mark in the back of people's minds, right, about what is safe and how they're perceived and their role and this sort of thing. But I think the first job of communists is really to explain what is, right? It's to tell the truth that these problems that ordinary people face are need solutions. And the longer the left waits to actually put its neck out on the line and to mobilize, yes, of course, to face down the threat of these far-right thuggish elements in society, but also put forward a program that can cut across, basically, this right-wing demagogy. The longer the left waits or dithers and delays, the more the more we are going to see things like this, the more the right will feel extremely emboldened as a result. And that's very dangerous. Yes. That's extremely irresponsible, actually, especially at a time where there is so much hatred towards the government, and yet it feels the left is failing on every count to actually say who is to blame. Yeah. It's, of course, not just about Starmer as an individual, but the bankers and billionaires that stand behind him. Without that, there is no point. There is no point, calling yourself a progressive or putting yourself out there, because I think what people are looking for at the moment more than anything is real solutions, real answers to the problems that they face in everyday life. Yeah. And that's really what's lacking on the part of the left. They're not putting their neck out on the line enough. They aren't actually fighting this fighting fire with fire, right? Like actually putting forward a bold socialist program that could cut across these things. So Starmer is despised almost universally across the political spectrum. And I would say to people that look on the weekend's events and draw this picture of, well, maybe maybe there is this huge rise of the right wing and it's unsafe to leave the house and this sort of thing. I think a lot of the left at the moment are drawing the most pessimistic conclusions. Yeah. Everything is just a sea of reaction. We are small. We basically need to kind of bunker down, and people can't actually, people aren't drawn in by our ideas and this sort of thing. But I wouldn't say that really reflects the real mood in society.
Yes, exactly. And, you mentioned the hundreds of thousands of people who've signed up to the Your Party mailing list, and the up to 1 million people who've taken to the streets for Palestine. Yes. We know what the potential is out there. And actually, it's not that hard, I would say, to say very clearly to people that Starmer, Nigel Farage and Tommy Robinson, they represent the same side, which ultimately is the capitalist system. And they are linked also because who funds them, right? One of the kind of ludicrous, nauseating points of Tommy Robinson's demonstration was freedom of speech. They've really latched themselves onto this, trying to ride the wave of the killing of Charlie Kirk in America. Elon Musk was even speaking at the demonstration, all about freedom of speech. And there's very simple questions we can ask, like who paid for the stage that he was speaking on? Who paid for the massive sound system, right? Who is funding Tommy Robinson? That money is coming from somewhere.
And Farage.
And it's the same forces in society that defend that uphold the capitalist system as a whole. Yes. And so actually it's very important for us to make this about capitalism and make it about the system. Because once you're able to connect these issues correctly, we make our movement bigger because we are actually uniting it on a class basis, right? The working class has Tommy Robinson, Nigel Farage, Starmer. They have no interest in advancing the interest of the working class, right? They are defending their own interests.
Yes, and they're all hypocrites.
And they're hypocrites.
I think we should point this out very clearly. all of them, for different reasons, after the assassination of Charlie Kirk, spoke about political violence and it getting out of control.
Yeah.
These people, all for the same reason, more or less, support the genocide in Palestine.
Exactly.
Well, in fact, they deny that it even exists, right?
Yes.
I mean, it's absolutely absurd that a figure like Charlie Kirk can be held up as this paragon of freedom of speech and nice liberal values and this sort of thing. Look at the guy's track record.
Yeah.
Isn't this the same person that was making excuses for Derek Chauvin, the police officer that killed George Floyd?
Yes.
Isn't this the person that supported what Kyle Rittenhouse did at the BLM protest? Isn't this the person that, for his own bizarre evangelical reasons, was a diehard supporter of Zionism, right? And all of them come out and say, this is terrible, the political climate. Look at what the left is doing. Look at what this government is doing. Look at what Donald Trump is doing in the Middle East. Look at the trail they are blazing of just death and destruction all across the world. How dare these people try lecture us about political violence and freedom of speech? What an absolute joke. Who paid for that stage for Tommy Robinson, as you say? In fact, when you even think about Charlie Kirk and his meteoric rise in the United States, it shows how unfree the political debate is.
Exactly.
What you need to be relevant and to stir the pot with your culture war nonsense is to have billionaire backers, right?
100%.
To be Trump's little sidekick, right? A little cheerleader for, a disgraced billionaire.
Yeah, Charlie Kirk got where he is, not through the power of his ideas, but through the power of the billionaires who backed him.
Yes.
And that is why he was able to have the influence that he did, which again, we should say is not a static, fixed thing. There has been nauseating hypocrisy, which I think will cause a bit of a backlash, basically, right?
Yes.
When people see through, I mean, we're not in America. That's something for our American comrades to discuss and analyze. But the kind of state funeral and the response from the ruling class has been extraordinary. But yeah, I mean, it's just and these are points that the left can and should be making, because I think we live in a time where so many young people, especially, are questioning all of this stuff and looking for answers and want to do something about it. They don't just want to see all of this crazy news every single day and accept the idea, well, the world's going mad and everything's awful and I'm just going to doom scroll on TikTok for the rest of my life and hope that I'll just kind of scramble my way through. And that is essentially what the RCP is building. Yes. And we're just about to go into a huge recruitment drive, essentially, right? The end of September, the start of October is a freshers period where all across Britain, hundreds of thousands more of students are going to university. They're starting university. And we're going to be there and we're going to meet them and discuss politics, discuss communism, and discuss the fact that, there are crazy events taking place, that, like Tommy Robinson's March, but also there's incredibly inspiring events taking place, like a revolution in Nepal and in Indonesia. These things are all happening at the same time. Yes. When we talk about a polarization in society, maybe to the right and we have to say, well, it's also to the left, and it's all kind of being churned up at the same time in the same process.
Yes, yeah, and of course it's struggling to find expression.
Yeah.
And it can express itself sometimes in the most fabulous of ways, right? Through revolutionary struggle, and I think that's really what's coming out in Asia at the moment, in South Asia, in Nepal, in Indonesia. Yeah, it's very reminiscent of what happened not so many years ago in Sri Lanka as well, when they overthrew the Rajapaksas and they started swimming in the presidential pool and taking pictures. And in Kenya last year, where the term Gen Z revolution was really dubbed and trending on Twitter. And I think we should come back to this in future episodes on the Gen Z revolution. But you're absolutely right that the polarization does go both ways. And people are becoming, especially young people, are becoming more and more open to radical alternatives.
100%.
And they're striving to find something, a party, an organization, which can actually explain why the world looks the way it does. And that is the power of ideas. And
Yes.
that's really our unique selling point. And that's what we'll be putting forward at Freshers Fairs up and down the country.
Yeah.
I think we actually have a video.
We do. We have a video from one of our comrades in Edinburgh, Sarah, who they've just had their Freshers Fair, or they've had the first day of it. So I'll show you it now, and we can see how it went for her.
Hi, Khaled and Fiona. Thank you a lot for putting on this great podcast. And yes, we've had a very exciting welcome week at both the University of Edinburgh and Napier last week, where we had close to 100 people sign up, really, people who want to know about communism, and literally people wanting to join on the spot. Like, we had 2 people join the RCP by the end of the week, and we've got at least 2 more who are lined up for a joining meeting. They want to, get stuck in and join the RCP. And a lot of the people that came up to us at the Freshers' Stalls had questions about Palestine, about anti-immigration, the rise of reform, Corbyn and your party, and Labour. But the most common things that people came up to us wanted to know about was just communism and Marxism. What are these ideas, and how can we actually understand the world, and how can we analyze it, and what should we do about it, basically? And obviously we have the answers to all those questions. And in fact, I'm going to our first public meeting at the University of Edinburgh, titled "Why You Should Be a Communist," where we expect at least 10 people to come who wants to join the RCP and want to learn more about communism, if not more. And so, yeah, we've got our work cut out for us. We've got close to 100 people that we need to talk to. And, for the rest of the semester, we want to put on meetings and reading groups to discuss all of these issues and to answer the questions also about the basics of Marxism. And yeah, I'm really excited for it. And if this was replicated in all the freshers and all the universities that we're active in, we're going to get so many people join in the next couple of weeks, which is really, really exciting.
Hurrah.
Hurrah. That's so funny.
Thanks, Sarah.
No, that's amazing. And well, they're going to be busy. 100
Yes.
people. Wow. But that was just the perfect summary of what will be happening on, what did you say earlier, 50 campuses?
Something like that.
We're going to be on 50 campuses across Britain, meeting students. And I think, yeah, a lot of the questions that Sarah just raised, Palestine, reform, your party, Jeremy Corbyn, the things we were just talking about, actually. And this is what we do as the RCP. We meet people, explain the processes that are happening in the world, and how the Marxist analysis of it is the most correct one, because it tells us where we need to go, essentially. And so this week, I think I have the list. Do I have the list? Yeah. This week, do you want to read?
Yeah. So Freshers Fairs will be going along to this week. You can find us in Glasgow, Leeds Beckett, UEA, Teesside, Sheffield Hallam, Queen Mary's London, Liverpool, Westminster, and Hull. And that's just this week.
More to come. No, yeah, as you say, look, in the next couple of weeks on the podcast, we're going to discuss in much more detail the Gen Z revolution. And we're going to be talking to all of these students. We're going to meet thousands of students in the next couple of weeks with questions about communism, Marxism. So we also want to appeal to anyone listening to the podcast to send us questions that you have. And we will try and answer them and give a go as to what we might say. It'd be good to hear like real questions that people are asking in real life, I mean, as well as questions you might have as an individual. And yeah, because this is what we're out here to do. We are not pessimistic about the world. The complete opposite. We are revolutionary optimists because we can see all of these crazy events and know that it's just the forebeginning of it's part of I need you to take over. What is it the start of?
It's like being able to see what actually is,
Yes.
right? It's and finding our place within that as well, right?
Yeah.
I think this is what being a member of the RCP does. It
Yeah.
allows you to understand the sequence of events, this maze of things that are happening in the world. Every single week feels almost like a decade at this
Yes,
stage.
100%.
And it kind of anchors you to what actually is, what's going on in front of you, allows you to understand it, and then we can act on that basis, right?
Yeah.
And our number one priority is going to be finding radicalized youth that are open to the ideas of communism, Sarah says in the video, there's 100 people that are looking towards us in Edinburgh. I think if we're intervening in 50 different places, what's that? 5,000 people?
Yes.
We could come even more maybe. This is the prospects that are opening up in front of us.
Yeah.
And so it's going to be a very busy period. And we're hoping to recruit for revolution.
That's it. Well, thank you so much, Khaled, for joining me on Communist Radio. Thank you for listening. As I said, we're going to be doing this weekly. We're going to be discussing what's happening in Britain, but also, I would say more broadly, the Gen Z revolution, wherever it's expressing itself all over the world. So yeah, make sure you tune in, but more importantly, get in touch with the RCP so that you can be a part of this. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.